what is peer support? Like, if you had to define it, what is peer support?
Peer support is just in essence, you know who you can trust and who you can't trust within the department. And some people trust other people and other people don't. So having a robust team is consists of having the right people in the right positions that get some extra training, that know that when one of their brothers is struggling, they understand how to work with them. And it's really not about being the counselor, but about being somebody that can help them resource. Hey, I know of these clinicians, I have this training. And maybe they put a hand on your shoulder and say, dude, you're going to get through this, and I'm going to be here for you. So it's a move towards them, not away from them. And that's really all peer support is. I know a lot of times, like with the departments that I work with and for, we got to really break down what is peer support. And it's really about resourcing and just moving towards. You don't have to resolve all the problems. It's not the cuddle club. I've heard it called that before, where we talk about our feelings or anything like that. But it's just a friend. It's just a friend that you trust, that's not going to go blurt your information to everybody in the department, and kind of has your back, so you don't feel so all alone when you're going through something like this.
Well, and I know, again, you and I kind of reconnected when a relationship with the Nevada Peer Support Network started to develop. And so I know you're deeply involved with the Nevada Peer Support. Would you mind telling us kind of their mission and the nuts and bolts of what's going on there?
Absolutely. So, living here in Nevada, we have some rural communities that don't really have established mental health programs, which could just, consist of having a peer support team. And so, it evolved as a website that the founder, Derek Reed, developed. And it was really about, okay, that the Truckee Meadows Fire Department had a suicide within their department, and they didn't know who to reach out to. And so Derek developed this website that basically said, hey, here's a list of clinicians, here's a list of programs, and it's essentially evolved from there. That was the nuts and bolts of it. Where do we go when we have a catastrophe or somebody that's really struggling? And then from there, we realized that there's a lack of training, there's a lack of availability for people and departments in general to really know where to go when these things are happening, and the cultural competency, obviously. And so the way that it's really evolved is what we noticed, for example, that Washoe County, the sheriff's office had a horrible incident that took place that was over several different locations. All right. And it was a suicide. The deputy's husband had committed suicide. So now we have people within the sheriff's office that were deeply affected. This person actually was a first responder as well. So then you have that department that was deeply affected. And then you had the location of the suicide. So for one team to think that they can handle that, it just didn't seem really, it wasn't fair, because you had people within that peer support team that were really struggling, and then they had to bury their feelings and then be there for other people. And that's when Nevada Peer Support Network stepped in and was like, hey, we're going to use peers that are not within any of these departments, and come in and allow you guys to grieve and mourn and do that. So what we notice is one peer team for a deeply affected agency isn't enough. It's kind of like you need the outsiders to come in so everybody can grieve and kind of get through that.
Well,
And that's the essence of it.
and that makes sense, because I know some of the agencies that we speak with just aren't very large.
Right.
And an event can affect a large percentage of that whole agency. And
Right.
so maybe your whole peer support team is affected by that agency, or by that incident. And so,
Yep.
how would you suggest that agencies reach out to one another? Or how do you create that network if you're part of one of those departments?
Well, I think an internal team is super important, because really just if you have, and the rural agencies are they just don't have the resources. And so you can imagine they're just seem to be a little bit further behind the eight ball as far as stigma and things like that. But when you get people within the agency that are trained, that can help communicate and train other officers about what is PTSD, you just start to kind of break the stigma of and the fear of people reaching out. And so having your own team is super important. But the essence of Nevada Peer Support Network is to provide those services now. So what we've really branched into now is we have 4 clinicians on board that are culturally competent. We provide training for peer support. So if you're a rural agency or any agency that wants to establish a peer team, we can train them up and essentially provide all of the, at least a framework of the policies to take back to the department and essentially get a peer team established and a mental health team. And I really believe that any agency's mental health always starts with a peer team, and then you kind of grow from there. And so now, being with the city of Sparks, they have me as an embedded clinician, and Truckee Meadows has Dr. Nicholas, and so we all kind of work together. But what we've done is taken the legwork out of that. Like you don't have to figure out how to just call and say, hey, how, can you guys help us get this going? And we can do all that.
If you could like generally speak to the wellness programs that you see, or the mental wellness programs that you see, what's the number one mistake that you see agencies implementing?
At this point, we know that the clinical model, it intervenes when symptoms are already there, right? So basically, we don't fix the car when the wheels are falling off. We change the oil as we're going, if that makes sense. Or we don't sit at the bottom of the river and continually pull people out of the river without walking up the river and figuring out why they're falling in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So this true change that occurs, so we've kind of developed a program that focuses more on the relational building process of a mental health program versus the clinical model that is it's focused around diagnosing. It's focused around, you have all these things, putting you on administrative leave, just doing it the very slow way after you've already fallen in the river. We got to address it way earlier than that. And so they'll make that call. Well, most clinicians can't see them for, in this town, it's up to 2 months, or even longer than that. So they get put on a waiting list. And by that time, they've figured out maladaptive coping strategies to pretend that they feel better, and they ignore it and push it down. And so really, it's just a well working functional program has good peer support, trustable people within it. If a clinician is ever needed, they can see them at the point of the acuteness, and we've already built the relationship. So you'll see me on ride-alongs, you'll see me interacting with people, because I want to be on the forefront of their mind, that when something happens, they know who to call, they know who I am, they kind of understand my philosophies, and they know my lack of judgment is going to be, it's what they know. I'm not going to judge them when they walk in here, and we're going to take care of business.
Well, and I think that's probably an important part of it, right? I think about just my benefits plan at work. There's things that I don't even know that are in there, but having that awareness and having people, at least a contact person to reach out to, has got to be huge.
Well, and as with anything, we can go from the federal government all the way down to these agencies that, these smaller agencies that have these EAPs that post a number on the wall. You have no idea who you're calling on the other end. You know what I mean? We've heard of people reach out and tell their story, and then they're consoling the therapist. And, that's really not cultural competency, and that's not really understanding. And so you don't know who's on the other line. So it's completely, in my opinion, that's why, I think with a big agency like Sparks, I think they had 8 people reach out in a year's time to the EAP. And I've already seen way more than that just since December. I mean, exponentially more than that. And so we know that that EAP program doesn't, and I'm not knocking EAP because that might be all people have, and I really value. But are they going to call? No, it's an abstract number, and you don't know who's on the other end. That's why we're taking it from the clinical model to the relational model.
If somebody wanted to reach out to have you do your presentation or to come out and lead any classes or education, how can they do that?
Sure. I mean, I'm available. Yeah, it helps and hurts, and it's not really talking about my experience. It's that I'm always my worst critic. You know what I mean? Getting up and talking in front of people. I always say I'm pretty much a first responder at heart. I feel better sitting in the seat and being quiet than being the one up in front talking to people. But I really believe in the message, and I believe in helping people, and so I do it, and I enjoy it because I know that it does that. Uh, can be reached by email.
We will link to your email in the description. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know just how special it is when I see you present these things, and that maybe we could capture some of that was really, really important to me. And I know you're really busy because I know that client load is full, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your message with everyone.
I appreciate it, Ethan. Thank you for what you're doing too, and getting the message out there. That's how we get through this, and we make it easier for people to reach out. So I appreciate you too.
Be safe. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Take care.